Welcome to Grappling with Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making. Help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Jonas Goldson, and I would like to welcome my guest today. With me is Christopher Bauer, who is a speaker, author, and consultant on ethics, compliance, and accountability. Melissa Hughes is founder and principal of the Endrick Group, applying recent brain research to improve employee engagement, company culture, team dynamics, and innovation. And Mary Beth Molloy is a certified executive coach. She is president of MBM Elevate, CEO Group Chair of Vistage Worldwide Incorporated, and national board member of Perscalis, a nonprofit that provides no-cost technical training to individuals often excluded from tech careers. Thank you all for being with me today.
Thanks for having us.
And here is our topic. Recently, Oprah Winfrey apologized for the part she played in promoting unhealthy and unrealistic dieting. She said one of her biggest regrets is bringing out 67 pounds of animal fat onto her TV show stage in 1998 to illustrate how much weight she had lost recently. Indeed, throughout her career, the media has never tired of reporting on her weight going up and down. On the one hand, multiple online health sites decry the harmful effects of fat shaming. On the other hand, the CDC website highlights the need to, quote, reverse the obesity epidemic, unquote, by encouraging community efforts to focus on supporting healthy eating and active living in a variety of settings. What are some other examples of mixed messages being broadcast through our society? In general, are we becoming simultaneously hypersensitive and hypercritical, whitewashing unhealthy or unattractive behavior while catastrophizing where those behaviors are leading us? If our culture perpetually waffles between underplaying and overreacting to problems we face, how can leaders effectively promote positive change? The floor is open.
This strikes me as emblematic of a broader and, to me, deeply significant issue, which is the amping up of all points of view simultaneously certainly in the US, and I think across the world at this point, such that people are progressively less able to hold contradictory ideas in their head at the same time. And so the idea that, for example, promoting a healthy lifestyle and reducing fat shaming are somehow opposed to one another, to me, is both mystifying and alarming. It seems to me that those go perfectly well hand in hand, but like so many things, both cultural and political at this point, we're certainly implicitly, and I think often explicitly, asked to take a side, which I think is, first of all, from a cognitive standpoint, creating false dichotomies left and right, and number two, really fuels both the segmentation of thinking and the aggressive taking of sides that we're seeing across the board on issues both cultural and political.
You know, I'm one of many who has observed that our society is looking more and more like the Roman Empire, and gladiatorial combat is not just football; it's cable news, or
Yeah.
passage for it, and these YouTube podcasts, and you know, it's the spectacle, as you say, and let's just polarize as far as we can, bludgeon each other, and that's a form of entertainment, even though it never leads to anything productive.
Yeah, and actually, I would be fine. Well, I would be less not fine if it only led to nothing productive. But my sense, even as a pathological optimist, is that it is a wildly destructive trend.
You know, when I first started thinking about this, it took me back to not too long ago. I think it was I can't remember. I think it was in the New York Times. There was an expose about this woman who was trying to she was really making being fat like a thing, like not because it was healthy, because but it isn't, but because it's her right to be fat. And so for her, her view was, I am who I am, and I love myself just the way I am, and it's my right to be. And in this expose, there were all the other issues that come with that, like the cost of healthcare and, you know, the lifestyle that she's actually setting her kids up for, because she has kids, and her theory was her kids got to eat whatever they wanted, and if they want to eat ice cream for breakfast, they can eat ice cream for breakfast, and it really doesn't matter. And so, you know, I was equally as interested in the comments about this article, and there were two camps. There were camps that said she gets to do whatever she wants, and she can raise her kids however she wants, and then there was another camp that was like, that's child abuse, because you're setting these kids up for a very unhealthy life, right? Because we know that eating habits start really, really early. But to me, the whole thing kind of distilled down to, what are my rights? Is it my right? And I think right now, not just with the fat shaming and the diets and this particular topic, but Chris, to your point, I think like right now, we are so entrenched into these camps of what is my right? It's my right. And whether it's good for you or not, and I think the broader question is whether it's good for your community. And like in this particular case, her community is her family,
Yeah.
but a lot of people are exercising their rights in ways that are not good for the community at large.
Yeah, I beat this drum a lot. Judaism speaks very little about rights and at great length about responsibilities. And if I'm demanding my rights and you're demanding yours, we're going to be bumping into each other all the time. And if I'm looking out for you, if I'm being responsible for you and you're being responsible towards me, then we're probably going to make it work one way or another.
No.
Mary Beth, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of think, you know, what Christopher was saying, everything seems to be an or. It's either you're this or you're that. And I don't know if that's safe or easier or we're just lazy, but there aren't a lot of binary things. You know, everything's on that continuum. So, and multiple things can exist at the same time. So I do get confused on why it has to be this or that. And then the categorization of if obesity is not healthy, okay, I'll go with that. Then I have this category that says everything in that category is bad. Obese people are bad. You know, doing this is bad. It's like, okay, you know, there's a category and then there's the individual. And when we just throw everything into these categories and kind of forget they're individuals with real lives, with lots of different things going on, to take a stand at such a high level, I don't know, just never seems to make much sense to me, because those things never, once you pull away things and put a human in the situation, it's really not where we can solve things anyway.
Didn't you post about this today? Was that you? Or am I misremembering?
I mean, I may have along the lines, because it seems to come up in a lot of conversations where we just kind of peanut butter spread an opinion. And I don't know, I find that it's just typically not helpful to whatever we're trying to solve, to just say, well, this is the way, right? I believe in this, therefore, boom, anything you say just gets discounted. And then we never connect, right? Because I stay here, you stay there, and the truth is somewhere, right? And the solution is somewhere in between. So,
Jonathan, can I go to anti-Semitism on this one?
Well, I
Beat me
won't
to
say no. Sort of thinking with the chanting and the slogans, it's sort of hard to avoid these days, but go ahead.
So a few weeks ago, I wrote an article about all of the college protests. And Chris, back to your point about having those two opposing ideas both being true. I mean, it's not an either or, as we're all agreeing. But, this whole idea that you can denounce anti-Semitism in all of its forms, and you can also want the suffering and death and destruction in Gaza to stop. And, I wrote this article and I was astounded at the pushback that I got. Like the article was about anti-Semitism, and the pushback was, but what about Gaza? What about the Palestinians? And my response, and I really worked hard to craft it very carefully. My responses were, of course, I want those people to be safe. Of course, we all want the death and the suffering to end. And I want my Jewish community here to be safe too. Can we not agree on that? And it was very difficult for people to say agree. I agree. It was, yeah, but let me give you these statistics.
On both sides, right?
What's that?
On both sides, I assume, right?
No, not really.
Oh, really?
Most of the pushback was, that I wasn't acknowledging that what was going on in Gaza. And
Interesting.
admittedly, the article was focused on anti-Semitism here.
I got you. Yeah.
And I owned that. I said, I didn't do research on all the numbers, so thank you for educating me. That said, yeah, we can want that to stop over there and want this to stop over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very difficult for people to take that position.
That was your point at the beginning, Chris, right? People's incapacity to hold two ideas at the same time. And even when they're not really in conflict.
No, often they're not in conflict at all.
Right? Right. They're just associated with different camps. And once I'm in one camp, I have to now summarily reject everything that the other can. I read an article once, I don't even remember what the topic was, but somebody sent me a rather aggressive comment. And I said, well, if you look down a couple of paragraphs, you'll see I said exactly what you're saying. And he wrote me back and he said, I apologize. He said, I read the first couple of lines. I thought I knew where you were going, and I didn't bother to read the rest of the article. And thank you for pointing out to me. So at least there was a little progress to be made there.
Yeah, good.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of back to the preamble to this about shaming. That has become the way to argue, the way to debate, the way to, right? So it's
or to avoid debate.
I'm going to shame you, Melissa, for talking about that by saying, therefore, you're okay with all of this. So you think of, I'll throw gun rights out there. Well, if you believe in the amendment, then you're okay with this. It's like, I don't think people should be picking up guns and killing each other. Do I think we should have the right to own guns? I personally do. Should there be more things around it to not let certain people and to go through the background checks? But it's like, no, if you want background checks, you're against the amendment. It's like, well, no, I want safety. I want smart. I want that. But
yeah.
It'll immediately take something that you are going to feel shameful about. Like, oh gosh, do people think that, I don't care about the people in Gaza because I said that? And then it's like, well, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. But it's an easy way to even not engage in the conversation just by throwing that shame card out there of something that does make you feel shameful if they're putting that on you or labeling you that.
Well, it's also an easy way not to think. It's an easy way not to think. If you my association there goes back to your comment about rights versus responsibility, and this is which again in theory and I think in practice are certainly able to live in the same world. But my experience, particularly in the last 8, 10, 15 years, is that the more people focus on rights, the less they focus on responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And while I don't think that's across the board, I do think it is a pretty sturdy and pretty alarming trend. And I think in my mind is a big part of what underpins what you were just saying, Second Amendment rights. So, by God, I'm going to, carry AR-15 into Walmart just to show that it's my right to do it.
As I can do.
Call me naive. I don't happen to think that's a productive way to talk about either rights or responsibilities, but I do see that happening time and time again.
You remember in the Animal Farm, they teach the sheep to chant 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And at any time there's any kind of discussion that questions the authority, the sheep start in on their chant, and nobody else can get a word in. I think that was very, very well said, Christopher. It's a way of avoiding debate.
Mhm.
I'm just
No, and I'm going to push that one step further, not just avoiding debate, but also dismissing the other person's
Oh,
position
absolutely.
altogether.
100%. 100%.
And I think those are two very destructive things that are happening an awful lot right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think back to like the playground, grade school. It was a way to fit in, not fit in. It was the bully, right? There were the cliques, and they tried to dismiss and suppress and shame. And then I'd like to think most of us evolved and grew up and, got a little bit more comfortable with ourselves and accepting. And yet it seems like many, many, many people are regressing, and it just feels like I'm back in grade school on the playground and being separated by categories.
Yep.
And I'm curious what you guys think on where, why, how. It's not everybody. And luckily, maybe by choice, like I get to choose in the Vistage groups. It's an invite only. So we bring in people that are curious and growth minded and high integrity. And, so we get to have our little bubble, maybe you want to call it that. So it's kind of a nice place to go. So it's not everybody, yet it feels like there's so much of that people either regressed or didn't evolve or are scared. I don't know. I'm not sure how we've gotten here.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, if we take a fairly macro view, which I know has its own problems, but from a macro perspective, I think, there have been certain cultural flashpoints in the last, 10 years where there has been a very conspicuous permission given to bullying and to not listening to the other side. And we now have a minimum of one generation, arguably a generation and a half, who have been brought up now in a culture where through the media and through social interactions, that's their experience of how, that's what dialogue, means, or why you don't have a dialogue. And so I'm very concerned about the cultural propagation of this, that is something that once it's infused enough into the culture, I think there's a systematically higher possibility that it becomes culture-wide and more ingrained. And even as historically a pathological optimist, I see this going down a bad and progressive road at this point. And not that it can't be turned around, but I think the more we let it go, the longer the time, the tougher it will be to turn around.
Well, gravity has a constant downward pull. There's a comment here I hesitate to read because I really don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I think it's a valid point. The increased use of shaming seems the logical consequence of having a former president who uses it on a daily basis to attack those who disagree with him. This is from Juan Carlos. I'd say I don't think that particular former president started it. I think he took it to another level. But I think if you look back, the way the media loved to portray George W. Bush as an idiot, even though I believe he got straight A's in his MBA program. If you remember, Chevy Chase would mock Gerald Ford as a klutz, even though he was an all-American football player. There's something about the culture that loves to indulge these kinds of stereotypes. And I think it's kind of one and the same. It's so much easier to caricature than to actually engage on an intellectual level.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll add in just, I mean, social media. I have a tech background. I love technologies for all the things it enables us to do. But when you do look, when you do look under those algorithms, right? And I think about this even in my coaching, when I'm talking with execs and there's somebody in the business that has bad behavior. And one of my questions is, how much have they been getting rewarded for the bad behavior?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, they're the top salesperson, or they're right. And you think about the algorithms in social media, the more likes I get, I'm getting rewarded for saying the things I'm saying. And if I say them louder, say them more extreme, and I get more likes, it is that self-perpetuating, self-rewarding. And, you know, I think we've done it on an individual basis, right? Just in our workplaces where we reward behavior that isn't conducive for the rest of the team, and so on and so forth, because there's something in there we want. And the courage that it takes to say, you know, that's out of balance. I do want this. You need to throttle that down, or, you know, the whole thing goes.
Yeah.
But now throttling up and being that extreme continues to get rewarded, right? Used to be Saturday Night Live, funny, ha ha ha. But now it's marketing people, influencers, right? I'm getting paid to not produce anything, but to influence you to do something by probably being loud and extreme and on it and pushing, and the more influencers I get paid for doing that. So I keep getting rewarded.
Well, and I'll add another layer to that with social media, which is not only are you rewarded for saying these things that they like, but there's a co-evolution, if you will, that because the algorithms are feeding us what we want to see, we're more likely to be in front of more people who want to hear what we're saying. So both sides are getting rewarded, right? And then that the person's the recipient of that information, because it's, again, they fit the algorithm for who wants that kind of a message, is also going to be spreading that further. So there's I don't know what the right term is, but you know, essentially a geometric increase in the kind of cultural inculcation of those ideas. And you add to that the idea that regardless of how open-minded any of us wants to be, social media to some degree is pretty much always going to put us in some sort of a bubble, reading and seeing what we want to know. There's a progressive isolation, a progressive fragmentation, a progressive otherizing that even those of us that like to think of ourselves as particularly open-minded probably can't avoid to some extent. You know, I mean, I know I make an effort to sort of seek out contrary information because I want to know who's thinking something different than I am. Sometimes it's hard to find it, and believe me, I know it's not difficult because it's not out there. It's just not. I have to go actively looking for it because it's not what's fed to me, unless I look for it enough, and suddenly that's all that's fed to me.
And then one more
On
point
social media
is the speed of social media. There's no time for nuance.
Yeah,
you got to just get soundbite in, get that slogan in, get that witty remark in or half witty remark in, and then move on to the next thing. Yeah. And you know, for the people that were willing to listen to something like this, or I mean, some of these long, what do they call them, long form conversation podcasts. I mean, some of them go on for 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
Some of them sound really interesting. I don't know where people find that amount of time to invest, but
see, I thought long form was 5 minutes now.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I think over the last, I'm going to say 10 years, and I'm not going to ascribe any cause to this, but I do think our norms have shifted so much over the last decade or so. And I think it's a variety of things. And I remember, you know, on Facebook, I don't know how many years ago, but I was like, I have had it. I am boycotting Facebook. This is not good for my blood pressure. I'm out. And the thing that like set me off was not that there was so much fake information out there, or not that people were so hateful, but it was when they started to put fact checkers on false information. Like, you know, this is false information. And then people were like, you've censored me. And I was just like, I'm out. I can't, like, I just can't, like, but I think that was kind of the beginning of me looking, and I work with kids, so I look at this, kids learn norms from us. They learn what's acceptable from us. And, you know, I think about these kids that are on college campuses now, and, you know, what their, how their worldview has crystallized over the last 10 years. I mean, look at what's happened over the last 10 years in everything, you know, from the pandemic to just everything has impacted their worldview. And now that influences what they think is okay to say and okay to do. And I think, you know, if you look at the rise of anti-Semitism, like it all follows that path, that line. You can see all of the similarities. And so, I mean, I do think we've kind of lost our way in terms of role models. And I just mean generationally, I don't mean a person, but generationally teaching the next generation what is okay and what is not okay, more importantly.
Yeah, agreed. I would love to be able to disagree. I can't.
Well, you know, I'll take your optimism line, and I think about the US, and I'll just call it free market, the creativity, the innovation that I think the pendulum has swung, right? I just don't know, is it still swinging? But it tends to come back, right? And there'll be enough folks that say everybody doesn't want this type of algorithm, for instance. Everybody doesn't want this medical marketing in their face to tell me to take all these different drugs when I don't even know what they are. And things will evolve that will be fact-checked based on data, based on research. And I just think even like in Chrome, they have the incognito, right? So I could go and bring up an incognito tab so that I don't get those ads, and it doesn't get tracked, and it doesn't, even though they kept it in the background. But anyway, those things I think are out there. I know for like my news app on my phone, I go and clear cache or I uninstall it just to get, you know, to start the algorithm over to give me a fighting chance. And I really think because of the type of country we are, and we have a lot of smart people, and everybody is not happy with this or satisfied, that there will be things that come out that a news source, a social media that does it differently because the pendulum has swung so far. So
I certainly hope you're right. My two concerns, and I cannot begin to tell you how much I hope I'm wrong about both of them, is number one, that it is so much more convenient for most people not to think, that it continues.
For most people?
I'm going to say most people, including people that have plenty of intellect to do the deepest thinking possible. It is more convenient. Again, I'm certainly not saying they think it's more desirable, but if there's a shortcut to something, I think most people will take it. And number two, and this is kind of sort of interwoven with that, at least at this point, market economics are wildly reinforcing for media in general, but particularly social media, to stay as it is. And until there's some wildly effective incentive for some alternative forms of social media, I'm very worried we're going to stay mired where we are for a long time. Now, I do believe, like you do, ultimately, at some point, I couldn't ever sleep again if I didn't think ultimately it was not going to change. But in the meantime, part of where my insomnia takes me is that I think there's an awful lot of reinforcement, both intrapersonally and economically, for things to stay the way that they are. And again, if anyone can convince me otherwise about those two things, I will be forever grateful. But that's at least my thinking as of the moment.
I mean, we are driven by the economics of anything. So I completely agree with you. And we've always have had emerging companies and technology and people that see that gap and make it happen. I just love the fact that a lot of schools are having cell phones put aside during the entire school day.
Yeah.
And they're already tracking, and the kids are saying, wow, I actually get to know my people in the room. And so I think that will drive, right? Okay, nobody's on their phones, nobody's engaging in that. People are dumping Facebook, people are dumping whatever it is. And that will drive the economics that they want something else.
I can only say I like your idea so much more than mine. I so hope you're right.
But Chris, to your point, I mean, there is mental fatigue. As amazing as the brain is, it does try to take the easiest path possible. I mean, that's why we're creatures of habit, because we like to do things that are easy.
Yeah.
And I just read a study not too long ago about time of day and how fake news and these salacious headlines get spread more frequently at night than they do in the morning. And it's because we're much more susceptible to just share without thinking, we don't have that discernible space to take that minute because we've made decisions all day long. And so, by the end of the day, we've got decision fatigue and we've got mental fatigue. And so, it's why infomercials work.
Let's relax into our bigotry.
Well, it's
Yeah.
scandalous behavior that they've shown. that
Makes sense.
But
scandals often happen late in the day for
Yeah.
exactly that same reason of decision fatigue. People are they've made the decisions. That's why Steve Jobs had his black turtleneck and his jeans. He wanted to make as few decisions as he had to that weren't critical or to what he was doing. And
even further than that, just beyond what you wear in the morning, like judges, they've looked at judges, and I think these were I think the study was done in Israel, and it was like 1,100 probation cases over the span of a year. And so it wasn't like this tiny sliver, it was a pretty good sample size. And at first thing in the morning or right after a break, judges were much more likely to grant parole than at the end of a session or at the end of a day. And for the exact same crimes.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's real. And judges are trained to be unbiased and fair and so, I mean, I think that is a real thing. And I think we're busy. I think we all lead busy lives. And by the end of the day, we're just like, whatever, okay, whatever. And going back to the whole dismissive piece, it's much easier to dismiss at the end of the day. Like, I've had it, I'm done. You're wrong, I'm right.
Yeah. Next.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm the mom.
Because I said so.
That's when you shoot that up at the end of the day. Yeah, because I said so.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that, Melissa.
well, I've had it with you all. I'm just gonna stop this. I'll share with you one of my secret dreams, and don't tell anybody. And I only need, I don't know, maybe a few tens of millions of dollars to do this. But
will you take a check?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
What I would love to see someone do is get a group, I don't know if you call it a think tank or not, or a more colorful name, a group of that brings in liberal and conservative scholars to present issues of the day in a balanced way that explains both sides, that they can agree on what their final, not necessarily their decision on the issue, but that the presentation of the issue is balanced and accurate and well-reasoned. And then get Pixar or somebody like Pixar to put these into 10-minute, high production, highly entertaining presentations. They do this with science. It's like, what's it called? SciShow, I think. It's on YouTube. And if you want to know anything about science, you can go on here And they've got all these arcane topics that are presented in a really entertaining way. So you can actually force yourself to learn something and not be bored silly by it, want to turn it off in the middle. I think that if we want to solve this problem, we have to appeal to people's mental laziness and find a format that is so entertaining that people will want to watch it and will accidentally become informed while they're being entertained.
You get my vote. I will add to that.
I'll donate $10.
Yeah, right. Good. It's going to start a GoFundMe. And again, call me crazy, but or naive at least, but a return to very intentionally teaching critical thinking skills in schools from a very early age.
I was going to bring that up as well, Chris, because I think when I listen to my members, I mean, it's one of their, granted, I don't have the skills, the very specific skilled people that I need, but I'd say it's more about, I don't know where the critical thinking has gone.
Yep.
I tell this story often when I was teaching high school, and this probably goes back about 30 years. And this one girl in a class, very, very bright young lady, very good student. And I very much used the Socratic method. I would ask questions to guide students to try to show them that they could figure out a lot of things on their own. And at one point, this young girl, she says, "Why can't you just tell us the answer?" Yeah, it's thinking hurts.
Thinking hurts.
Yeah, there's a tagline for a discussion program.
There was, yeah.
I thought you were going to say for a T-shirt.
Yeah, well, that too.
There's this article that came out not long ago about TikTok, and the information in there was just chilling. How it's designed to be addictive. How the Chinese behind it don't let their own people watch it. How they curtail use of the internet in the evenings and limit the amount of hours during the day. And then how you can't even solve the problem by getting rid of TikTok because Instagram and YouTube are all copying this style because they want to stay competitive.
Yeah.
And
again, there is huge financial incentive for this.
Sure. And
Yeah,
that's a race to the bottom.
Wildly incentivized.
Well, do we have some positive note to end on? Well, I mean, again, I've said this before, and so some of my guests that this type of forum where we can actually try to examine the different angles and not batter each other to try to win our point of view, but just try to raise the topic, be a little more thoughtful, go a little deeper, be a little more nuanced.
Absolutely. And I think a positive note, at least to the extent that I can muster something in the moment, is, I don't think we've lost our ability for critical thinking. I don't think we've lost our ability to hold two contradictory sounding ideas. I think what we've lost is our inclination to use those skills. Mm-hmm. And if we can find ways to reinvigorate an interest and provide people with sort of like you were saying, examples of how you can hold two otherwise contradictory sounding thoughts in your head, and that's okay. Hopefully that can stimulate people doing that more often. Because again, I don't believe, certainly not yet, that we have lost our ability to do it, but certainly lost our inclination. So if we can incentivize the inclination, that would be a beautiful thing.
Well, and I'll add, there's 4 of us here, right, that believe this is important. Sounds like we operate this way, and I'd like to think that I'm impacting, right? I'm having a different ripple effect. So here's at least 4 people having the ripple effect that can help. So, and I don't think we're the only four. So
There's probably at least 5 of us.
So there's my optimism again. I think we, right? It's not them. I think I can impact, and I will impact, and I continue to, have that as something I will spend my time with. So.
Yeah, and I would just add, there's this construct of intellectual humility, like, tell me why I'm wrong, and I really want to know, and I'm asking you because I trust you. And I think that finding people that you trust enough to say, tell me why I'm wrong, and be open to why you're wrong, right? Because I think I'm slowly learning how to do this better. But I think, when you start a conversation with, this is what I'm thinking about, what am I missing? Like, tell me what I'm wrong. Tell me, what I'm missing here. I think that opens the conversation up to more of a dialogue and less of a, this is my opinion, I want to tell you my opinion, which is a monologue, right? So I think the more we can practice that, and it's a skill and you have to practice it. And I think the key is you have to be keep your eyes open and be on the lookout for people you can have those kinds of conversations with, because the more conversations like that you have, the better you get at it. And I mean, I've opened myself up and had those conversations with the absolute wrong people. And that's my job then to go, okay, you need to be a better picker, because it does take two kind of deep thinkers to pull that off, right? I don't want someone, I wouldn't ask you, what am I missing if I wanted you just to agree with everything I said. I mean, so you seek out people who have different perspectives, but they also have to be open to yours, right? So, and I just think it takes practice, and we get tired. We get tired of the beat down all the time. And to all of your points, there are people like us out there. We have to find them, and we have to have conversations.
Melissa, if you don't follow Adam Grant, he talks about creating your challenge, right?
Yeah.
You're creating your challenge network, which to me was kind of right in what you were talking about. So
Adam Grant, he's one of my heroes. Yes.
Yeah. And fortunately there are people like him that have much bigger platforms. What's his name? Emmanuel Acho started this podcast called Uncomfortable Conversations. Jonathan Haidt, I think, does wonderful work.
Yeah, Jonathan Haidt's great too.
Daniel Pink.
Yeah. I mean,
so see, Chris, they're out there and they're reaching many.
So we're up to 8 now, I think.
Hey.
But that's another positive thing to end on. Like, I think we underestimate the impact we can have on the world. Like, okay, I'm not Jonathan Haidt and I'm not Adam Grant, but like, I can have positive interactions with other people, and maybe they walk away and go, oh, that was kind of cool. Like, I'm going to try that too. And I think the more that we're able to do that just in our own sphere of influence, the more we can change the world.
Well, thank you for that, Melissa. I think that's a great note to end on, because I think it's true. If I change one person, and there's one more person out there, you can keep the tally going, Chris. And,
I look forward to it.
It's not just we can. I think we have a moral obligation to do what we can do.
Yeah.
Because
But back to responsibility.
Rights and responsibilities.
There you go.
Yeah, full circle.
Well, thank you all. Christopher Bauer, Melissa Hughes, Mary Beth Molloy. Very thoughtful and ultimately hopeful conversation. For those of you who are watching or listening, if you have a topic you'd like us to take up, please go to my website, ethicsninja.com. Use the contact information. If it's compelling, we will take it up in a future issue and a future episode. And until then, as always, encourage you to continue grappling with the gray.